Hi everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Not a Homestead. My name is Jen and come join me as I garden, make things from scratch, whether it's cooking, baking, DIY projects around the house, or really anything in my home, which is Not a Homestead in California, Bay Area. Today we're going to start with a garden tour and let me show you what we've got. So this is the first year that we put a garden in the backyard. We actually took out the grass in late spring or so and then put in 3 raised beds here, kind of raised beds into the ground. They're lined here with tiles from my cousin's roof that were taken off of my cousin's roof. And it's actually late July right now, July 23rd. And so this is our first season growing and this is just what we've got and what we tried out this year. We didn't fertilize the dirt at all because we just kind of wanted to see how it was, how the nutrient was, how the soil quality was. Yeah, so let me show you what we've got. Over here on the very end of our first bed, this is the sunniest bed. We've got companion planting tomato, basils, and green onion. There's also a couple of sprouts of parsley down there. We've got, this first one is Portuguese Monster, second one is San Marzano, and the third one I thought was an orange cherry tomato, but turns out it's a red cherry tomato. Then we've got a cucumber plant, a really sad looking eggplant over there, which might not even make it this season. Next to the cucumber is some long Asian purple beans, like yard beans, and I also planted those a little late, so hopefully they make it. Then this giant thing over here is Korean hami melon. It's actually pretty funny because I planted 2 of these, one of them like 10 feet away in a slightly shadier area, and that one grew like 1 vine. And this one, as you can see, is getting out of control. I even pruned it. I even took out some of the extra vines because I didn't want it to get too crowded and have any powdery mildew show up. So pretty exciting. These melons will be bright yellow and hopefully really sweet with a thin skin. Hiding in this mass of melon vines are 2 bell pepper. I think I actually forgot what seeds they were, so I had to wait until they flowered to figure out what they were. But I'm pretty sure now they're bell pepper, and maybe they're like mini orange bell peppers is what I had last year, so I probably saved the seeds and that's what they are. You kind of can see them here. They're the tiny green one coming up. And yeah. In the second bed over here, we had carrots that I just pulled out because they were ready. Then we have beets, more basil, second round of carrots, a few onions that didn't really make it, so I need to figure out what I'm going to do with onions. 2 huge zucchini plants, and those were from a neighbor. And on the very end of the bed, that's where that melon plant was that didn't really make it. So I pulled that out, gave it to my mom, because her backyard is pretty shady, and then put in some spinach there a couple weeks ago. In the third bed over here, it was all broccoli, but right now it's kind of sparse. I took off the main heads on all of them already, and we're just waiting for the side shoots to grow. But since I planted them so close together, maybe about 12 or 14 inches, and they were like in a zigzag scenario, they had a lot of pests, a lot of aphids, and a lot of caterpillars, maybe from too much moisture. So I think next year I'm gonna have to do a single row across the middle and have more spacing because the leaves get so big and I just don't really want the leaves to touch. Some of the side shoots are starting to grow out. You can see the first crowns were actually pretty big. They were maybe like 8 inches across. So we'll see how the second set of crowns grow up to be. So kind of mid-season in these broccolis, I pulled out some of them to make more space, more airflow, and I put in actually a couple seedlings of celery. Hopefully they start up, but I'm not sure if the dirt is too sucky for the seeds to germinate. So we'll see. Hopefully they show up, and I don't know. If they don't, I'll start some in a tray for late season planting. On the end of the broccoli bed over here, we've got a goji berry plant, which does terribly every year, so I don't really know what I'm doing wrong, but it always has powdery mildew. The seeds always get, the berries almost always get eaten, so I've probably gotten 5 berries from this plant in 2 years. And then the stick in the dirt is a mulberry tree cutting, And I checked that it was alive a couple days ago. See, if you scratch the branch, it's green inside. So I'm pretty excited. It's been a couple, maybe a year or a year and a half almost, and it hasn't grown any new growth, but it's alive. So hopefully by next year, it can grow leaves and maybe we'll have some mulberries in upcoming years. There's kind of a smattering of basil all over the place because I heard or I read online that basil will deter pests and aphids, but it obviously didn't work for the broccoli, or it's right here next to the broccoli and I still have aphids all over the place. Coming over here is my little potting table kind of thing. This is a temporary structure, but I don't know really how I'm going to do this, so it's just a bunch of pots piled on a little short table. We've got my yuzu trees that I started from seed a couple years ago, so these are 2 years old and maybe a little bit. They're about 10 inches tall right now, and I'm really excited about it because I think that maybe next year they'll flower and might get some tiny fruit. I just started them from seed just by soaking the seeds in water and putting them directly in the dirt. And we got free yuzu trees. I'm propagating some Euphorbia trigona here that I found on the street. And I'm pretty excited because most of them did come up. The cuttings from the end of the branch, did come up, which is exciting. But the cuttings from the middle of the branch don't seem to be making it. So we'll see how that goes. And then lastly for now over here, I've got my kaffir lime tree cutting branch propagating thing. I propagated this kaffir lime tree from a branch with rooting hormone, and I stuck that in the dirt, and I probably had to do like 10 of them, and one of them made it this far. That was probably spring of last year, so one's probably strong enough to last longer, and I'm pretty excited that at least one of them made it. Coming back over here, next to this massive melon vine, I just started my winter squash seeds, and it might be a little early because, like I said, it's late July right now, but I was worried that the weather is so, I don't know, all over the place that I don't know when the frost will come, and so I don't know how long these plants will have in the ground, so I started them a little early. We've got on the top here kabocha squash, taken from just a pumpkin that I bought from the farmer's market. Down here, a delicata squash, and then in these small pots over here, it should be spaghetti squash, but looks like none of them came up, so I don't know if the spaghetti squash that I got was, I don't know, needs to be pollinated in some way for those seeds to sprout, but we'll give it a couple, maybe one more week or so and see if those sprout. But most of my kabocha and delicata came up, so I'll probably give away the extras to my neighbors, or my mom, or my sister, or if anybody wants them. Let me know. If anybody local wants one, then I'll give you one. Then over here, I've got my white sage. I'm pretty excited to grow these as big as I can and eventually put them in the ground. We're hoping to do our front yard in like a native landscaping style. So if I can grow enough white sage, then we can put white sage all over the front yard, which the bees will love. So that's pretty exciting. The last 3 pots over here, I have lemongrass, which loves water, but is kind of getting dried out all the time because I don't water this side enough. And then 2 raspberry plants that I grew from cuttings. The 2 raspberry plants are doing great. This first one on the left grew a branch and gave us about 10 raspberries on that dried thing, and then I guess it maybe self-destructs that branch and grew a new one, the second one over here. So it looks like I'll have another round of fruit coming in. You can see a little closer that we've got these flowers with all those little stamens or whatever, and so that's what creates all the tiny raspberry fruit on the raspberry fruit bud, right? So each of those little things is a fruit. Each of those things has a pollination. Along the other side of the second bed, I've got a box of chives, and Chinese chives and not Chinese chives here in this box. This is where those spinach sprouts are coming up, and I've got a few edamame plants. Looks like I didn't really plant enough of them to have any amount of edamame, but you can see here that the pea beans are coming up pretty big. This one might actually almost be ready if you want to eat them fresh. So exactly 4 edamame beans this year. these are the 2 zucchini plants that we planted this year, and I think that 2 was actually too many because we have way too much zucchini. We're drowning in zucchini. And they get really big really fast. Like this guy right here is probably ready for harvest today. He's about like 9 or 8 inches long and maybe 4 inches in diameter here at this thick spot. And they're covered in styrofoam because the squirrels were eating the zucchini right when the zucchini was forming. So when the zucchini was like maybe 2 inches or so, the squirrels would just chomp off the whole thing. So that was annoying. I put styrofoam. It seems to be working, but not really sure. So that's it for episode 1 of Not a Homestead. Welcome to my garden, and if you have any questions or suggestions about what I should plant next year, I kind of am wondering whether I really need to do crop rotation or anything like that, or cover crop. I don't really want to do cover crop because I want to use the ground as much as I can. But if I stick with this companion planting situation, maybe I can get away from having to rotate the plants around, especially since really just this first bed here gets the most sun and the other ones are maybe only 6 hours of sun in the afternoon. So trying to decide what we're doing, and I probably have to decide pretty soon. Well, maybe not. The tomatoes are coming in a little late because, I don't know, climate change. So the tomato plants will probably be in the ground for another 2 or 3 months. But I feel like I need to get some seeds started in anyway. Okay, see you next time. Bye.